And this was my first feature film. And he looks and says, "Who is going to give you $3 million?" And it hurt. It was like a punch in the gut. I think, well, didn't you hear me? Didn't you hear the idea? It's great. The realization is that nobody owes me anything just because it's a good idea.
This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. I am excited for today's conversation because, the more that you and I post online and the more that we're trying to market ourselves in this show, like we get a lot more people asking us questions. And so I've noticed, at least in my own DMs and emails, this kind of underlying question that happens when people get frustrated that their project hasn't happened yet, or hasn't gotten funded yet, or hasn't gotten distribution yet. This question of like, why? why isn't it happening? Why isn't it working yet? And I am intimately aware of that question. I have asked that question of myself for my entire career. That question really never goes away in my experience. But what I thought would be fun today is to kind of ping pong back and forth with some answers to that question, why it may not be happening for your project right now. And we're going to share some experiences and get vulnerable again. And people love those episodes. And so, yeah, how do you feel about this topic?
I think it's a great idea for a topic, and a great. I mean, it's an answer. It's a question that never goes away. To be quite frank, at least for me and in my experience, and having made 8 feature films, but been pitching the last year, a couple of other projects, and you just never know which one is going to pick up, which one is to take off. But that question of why isn't this happening now, or in the timetable, or under the business model that I'm anticipating, why isn't it happening?
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it. And these are some great talking points, and hopefully this comes across as experiences shared and not theoretical. We've now made it and don't deal with this problem.
Yeah. I'm thinking of sharing, the lessons learned and then how I learned them. So
yeah, there you go.
Why don't we dive into the first one? This one is kind of a more current answer over the last 6 months or so. I read a book called Demand Side Sales 101, and it basically flips the script from supply side selling to demand side selling. So we could probably put a link in the show notes for this, a post that I wrote and a link to the book. But the lesson I learned was that I built a supply for a demand that doesn't exist. And so what that looks like in practice is most filmmakers assume that the marketplace is like waiting for their story. And because they feel so compelled and so strong and passionate about this project, that there has to be some demand out there. They just have to write it. They just have to pitch it well. They just have to show up and share it with people. And all of a sudden, all the yeses are going to come flowing in. But it has not been my experience, unfortunately. And so the lesson comes from me pitching projects for years. I mean, I've probably pitched a dozen TV shows and not a single one has been picked up. Just this week, I got an official no from a no that I assumed was coming 6 months ago when I pitched the project.
Yeah,
but
that's like too long. Just a side note, asterisk. If you're listening and you're supposed to give feedback on a pitch, 6 months is too late. So get to it now.
Yes,
Okay.
please give feedback in a more natural time frame.
That's probably a note for me too. People have probably sent me projects I need to.
Oh yeah, I cleared my inbox this week with like 3 from January that had sent me scripts that I requested. I was like, I'm so sorry. I got behind.
Yeah.
But the idea that just because I think it's a good idea doesn't mean the market agrees. And the goal is not to become better at convincing people, meaning better at pitching, better materials, any of that stuff. That's not really the issue. The issue is there's a misalignment between the demand existing in the marketplace and whatever it is you're supplying. So I don't know. I can get into more personal stories, but that's kind of the learned experience over the last few years of pitching stuff actively. is that it's not about how well you pitch. It's about, is there already an alignment with the demand that they have?
So is there a solve for it? I mean, I guess is there a summary solve?
I think so. If you are a producer or a writer or director, you probably have multiple projects that you're equally passionate about. Most of us creative people have lots of ideas in a folder or on our desk or in a notebook or wherever it is. And so rather than going out and the first, like, what happens to me is people just cold pitch me ideas in DMs or emails. They find my email because it's online and they send a pitch, and I've never met them. I've never talked to them. And I'm like, if you spent 5 minutes on my website, you would know that I'm not producing R-rated horror slasher thrillers. Like, that's just not an alignment with the types of movies I'm going to be doing.
Why does it take so long, Darren? Why does it take so long on your website?
To 5 minutes. Okay, 30 seconds on
There
my
you
about
go.
page.
I just
So I think what we should do instead is go out and ask questions. If you meet an investor at a networking event, tell me about the last movie you saw that you loved. And they go, "Oh, is this really cool?" Blah blah blah. You go, "Great, I have one of those," and that
yeah.
allows you, at least in the 2 minutes you've been talking, to at least pitch something that is in alignment with what they like. Maybe it's not something they want to invest in, but you at least know that it's a type of genre that that they like. And so, asking questions, I think, is the solve for that.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, I think a personal experience I could share with that was kind of how we got Faith of Angels off the ground. Was I was pitching and pitching different ideas to Living Scriptures, and which is they do a lot of kind of faith-based movies, a great distributor. And they kept saying no, 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 and then finally I sat down with them and said, "What do you want? Like, what is the box? What's the demand that you want?" And they gave me a couple of guidelines that this is what we're looking for, these types of stories, this type of budget, this is our audience. And with that, I was able to really parse through a lot of the other ideas and projects that I'd been pitching. And when one came across my desk that was, here's a story of a boy that's lost in an abandoned mine, I thought, okay, I think this could be one that would fit within Faith of Angels. And when I summarized it and wrote it up and spent my time writing a pitch and sent it over to him, the response was very positive. Said, yes, that's it. That's what we want.
Yeah. When
So great. Yeah.
I think about your experience going to NRB, and we talked about how you put together a pitch page that had 4 or 5 projects on there. And so what you were able to do in a very short period of time is go, this is the kind of stuff I do. If any of these resonate, we should have a conversation. It's a way to kind of extrude the demand in the marketplace and to say,
Yeah.
look, I'm going to test the demand here. You know, you're already in the right building because it's NRB, National Religious Broadcasters, right? So you know that people are aligned with faith-based and the types of movies you make. So you've already done the big step, which is you're not at some like Tony Robbins event trying to find investors. You're at NRB.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you went and you said, here's what I do. If any of this resonates, let's have a conversation. And then you had a lot of conversations because the demand was already present.
Yeah, and I only met with people that I already done the research on to say, look, this is the type of. I'm not just showing up again with ignorant to what they are looking for and saying, here's what I do. I'm saying, oh, I know what you're looking for. I've seen your work or your projects or whatever. We have mutual contacts, and they've told me about you, and these are the things that I think would align with your demand.
Yeah. Great.
Um, Okay, great, Darren. So, okay, the next one we have, the number two, the market doesn't owe you a yes, and that's what a good statement and a good lesson to learn, and it's very humbling to do that. But that is the hard truth, right? That no one owes you funding or distribution or attention. Uh, Already the market's oversaturated, and so there's yeah, you can come up with a great script, a great idea, and to just assume that okay, because here I am, the chosen one that's been given this idea for this movie, everyone is going to stop what they're doing and work on my movie or watch my movie or fund my movie. That would be very presumptuous and is not how things work.
Yeah. So the counterpoint to that, if the market doesn't owe you a yes, then you have to earn the yes. And
Okay.
so, I sense your next question coming. How do you do that? Well, I honestly think it comes down to packaging, which is kind of a way to create some leverage in a marketplace. So I've been using this example. I probably said it 3 or 4 times in like consulting calls over the last few weeks. So imagine the exact same project. So I'm a producer. I found this idea. I optioned the script, and it's a thriller, like a business thriller, and I can shoot it for $2 million, and it's going to be great. Will you invest in it? It's like, well, okay, but you haven't done business thrillers. Nobody knows you as a producer of business thrillers. You haven't had any success in that genre or with that audience, and so that's a hard sell. $2 million. Now, contrast that to I have the exact same script. I'm a producer. I found this really great thriller idea for a thriller. I go and I partner with Aaron Sorkin to write and direct the movie, and call my buddy Ryan Gosling to be in the movie as the lead. And we've all worked this out, and we're like, guys, if we do this on the cheap, if we do it for $2 million, everybody just kind of comps their fee. I'm going to not take a fee. Sorkin and Gosling aren't going to take a fee. We're going to do it for $2 million. It's still going to look amazing. But how hard would it be to go and get that thing funded? Not hard at all. People would be throwing $20 million at you, and you'd have to work really hard to say, no, 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 no. We really want to do it at this lower budget for these reasons. So it's not about the project, and it's not about your passion in the project. It's about you earning it by gaining leverage through packaging, which is like partnerships. You're going to package a talent. You're going to package a cinematographer, a writer, a director, some cast, and you're going to go make partnerships with brands that can do some sponsorships, some sales agents, a distributor, people who can help with the marketing of the movie. Like if you bring that to the table, it shows that you've done the work, and it's not just relying on the strength of your idea and the feeling of entitlement, which is, well, I came up with this and I put all that effort into writing it, so you guys do the next part.
Two questions. One, can you don't have to do it right now publicly, but can you just email me Ryan's contact info?
Yeah. Ryan Gosling at Gmail. It's really easy,
Is
guys.
that what it is? Is there a dot at
Yeah.
all in that?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I can't remember what my second question is, but it brought a personal experience up where I wrote my first feature, my first theatrical feature. I wrote the script and was so excited to do it, and I started raising money. Or I set meetings up with people that I had relationships with and pitched to them the idea, and the budget was set at $3 million. And a dear friend who he has become a dear friend since. But I sat across from his desk and he looked at me and listened to the project and was very attentive. And this was my first feature film. And he looks and says, "Who is going to give you $3 million?" And it hurt. It was like a punch in the gut. I think, well, didn't you hear me? Didn't you hear the idea? It's great. Like, and the realization is that nobody owes me anything just because it's some good idea or some script. And so I went back and reduced the budget and went through, and this perfect project or perfect script, suddenly its imperfections started to show, and got it down to 125,000, which we then made the movie, and it has certainly done well.
Yeah. Is that Saratov approach?
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the realization, is like, yes, nobody, that the true statement is nobody owes you anything.
Yeah. So if you really want to test where you're at with this, go to a market like AFM or Cannes. And we did this in 2015. So 10 years ago, we raised a little bit of money to put together essentially a sizzle or a teaser, like a 5-minute short proof of concept for this project. And I took it to AFM November 2015. And I did all the work of lining up meetings and setting up opportunities to chat with sales agents and financiers and distributors and even producers there. So I remember going to lunches. I went to lunch with Cassie and Elwes. I went to lunch with a couple of other producers. And I said, look, I'm not necessarily looking for you to produce this for me. Like, I want to produce this, but how do I raise this money? And their thing was like, look, you're really passionate about it. It looks and sounds like a decent project, but the way that you're like the expectation that you would produce, you and your partner would write, your partner would direct, and that there's no room to bring any leverage into the project is the problem. They're like,
Yeah.
you could actually do this project at $5 or $7 million, and it would be easier if you had a named director or some cast than you guys trying to do it yourselves, and you haven't made a movie at this budget before and expecting that you're going to do all of it. So they're like, I can't even get you 500K, let alone 2 million. It would be easier if you could let me package a different writer, a different director, and I don't know if it was foolish or not, or if it was just earnest on our part to say, well, no, the whole point of this movie is for me to break out as a producer and my writing partner to break out as a director. And so we kind of stuck to our guns. But what happened was we never got the movie made. So sticking
Yeah.
to our guns is only good to a point. If it prevents you from getting the outcome you want, that actually isn't serving you in your career.
Okay, so that's another point, and I know this deviates from our 5 bullet points or talking points, but the thought that I would have going back, looking back, and saying, look, do we make this movie for $2 million or whatever? Are there interested parties? Is I think one of the things that we often do as independent filmmakers is we overestimate the value of our idea or the preciousness of the product, and we don't anticipate that this will be one of many movies that we hope to make and are involved to make. So yes, in that situation or similar situation of trying to find leverage, I would 100% allow people, if there's interest in somebody saying, well, I'm interested in helping you get this made, but we're going to attach a director. Boom, great. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And until you're literally on set, I mean, as long as you hold the pen to the contract to the idea or whatever it is, and are credited accurately for that, then I think you move forward until it is completely, yeah, until you've created that leverage for yourself.
Yeah. If I have a regret for the 9 years that I spent as a co-owner of a video production company trying to make feature films, it's that I didn't say yes to the what we had available to us. Because maybe this is skipping forward to our number 4 on the list, but that's okay. Let's make that number 3. But this idea of like, if you have an opportunity to make something, go make something. Because
Yeah,
we did not make anything except for some short films and some YouTube videos over a 9-year period, and there's not a lot to show for it other than I got a lot of experience as a producer from doing a lot of commercial work. So I
yeah,
understood budgets and putting crews together and scheduling and all the skills I needed to then jump over and be a line producer. But man, we didn't have anything to show for those 9 years. And that's a huge regret that I have, because year one, we could have probably gone and raised 30 or $50,000 from family and friends, made something, a full length feature, and then made the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so the the number 3 thing on our list is kind of to build backwards from the constraints that you have. If you can't raise 500K or a million, well, what can you raise? Can you get 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000? Well, then let that be your creative constraint that creates something new and something interesting. And that's where people really get involved, because you look at some of these legendary films like Primer or Clerks or Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity. Oren Peli did like 8 jobs on that movie, wrote, directed, executive produced, shot the thing. Like, he did it all. And
yeah,
that was the constraint he had, and the thing made 250 million in theaters, right? So yes, it's an outlier in the box office success, but it's not an outlier in this principle of, well, work with the constraints that you have and you can actually make stuff. And when you make stuff, that gives you the momentum to get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Sitting there, hands crossed, going, well, I want $2 million for this movie, and I'm not going to accept a dollar less. You're going to end up like me, where it took me 12 years to produce my first feature film. 12 years is too dang long. It could have
right.
been 2 years if I had built backwards from the constraints, if I looked at what resources I had and just decided to make something.
Yeah. No, I think it's a valuable lesson. I think you can also find leverage in other things. You say, yes, we can lower the budget or whatever, or what is the valuable asset? We might not have RyanGosling.com, or they committed to our project. But I have, for my first feature, it didn't go to theaters. It was my first feature about scout camp. The leverage I had was a relationship with a working scout camp. Or I could say, look, let's do a story where the location is essentially primary character, and this may cost somebody else a significant amount. But I feel like through relationships or contacts, I can have this leverage for my project, and it will enable me to be able to make this. I don't know if that's too far of a tangent from that talking point.
No, I think it's perfect. It reminds me of Rebel Without a Crew, which is
Yeah,
Robert Rodriguez's book about making El Mariachi. That was a movie he made for $7,000 with a friend, a guitar, some borrowed locations, borrowed costumes. I think they found a turtle on the side of the road one day, and they decided to turn that into a shot in the movie. You're just like, he made it, and look where he's at now, and what he's done in his career
yeah,
because he applied this principle. Like, he just made something with the constraints that he had available. And the people who have that ability to make something and have progress and make and get some momentum, those are the people that have a trajectory that goes up and to the right. The people that sit and wait for the perfect yes. It's like, again, biggest regret. It took me 12 years to produce the first movie. I could have done it that weekend. Like the weekend we started our company, I could have been, let's go make something. I
yeah.
don't know how to produce it. You don't know how to direct it, but let's figure it out. And we could have gone and done it. And then we would have had that momentum and it would
Do
have
it on,
carried us forward
yeah, do it on the low budge and
on the
grow
low
from there.
budge.
Okay, so the next talking point is that ideas don't attract money, execution does.
Mm,
And I mean, it segues perfectly from what you just said, right?
yeah.
I love this little summary. It says, stop pitching what and start demonstrating how. And rather than, hey, here's an idea I've got, or this is it, here's this story element that we have about whatever it is, certain character in certain location goes through a certain experience. We'd say, I've raised money successfully on this August. I'm traveling to X location to tell the story, and we've cast, or we're going to cast, or we've met with this, and there's momentum happening.
Yeah.
If by July 1st we don't have this resource, then we will move on to a different person.
Yeah.
Is that something you're interested in? Um, and it's more of a how we're doing this rather than here's what we're excited about.
Yeah. I got a buddy. I'll say buddy. I consider him a buddy, but Derek Sivers is a person that I have, followed his writing and his trajectory of his career for my whole career. And he has this, it's now a chapter of a book, but he wrote it as a blog post about how ideas are just a multiplier of execution. And so what he says in his post is that a brilliant idea without any execution or poorly executed is worth $20. And a decent idea, so not a brilliant idea, but just a decent idea executed brilliantly can raise 2 million. And so I literally got this question this morning on LinkedIn. I put a post up and someone asked a question in the comments and literally posted their idea. I was like, this is amazing. I could use this in the podcast later today. And so she basically said, like, here's my idea. Here's all the people that are circling it. I've got some commitments and I have access to actors and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. Well, why has no one given you money yet? And my answer, to her was like, it's because you haven't done anything. Like, you have an idea and you expect everything else to show up. You need to take the responsibility and go, okay, I'm going to attach this person instead of saying I have an avenue to talk to this person. Go talk to him now. Don't wait for the money. Like, go talk to the money and the people and the producers and the locations and the distributors all at the same time. And that's how you get your momentum. You have to show the execution, not just, I have this really great idea. Because what it feels like then, as from the producer side, is I want you to do everything for me. It's like, well, no, my execution is worth more than your idea. And so that's not a fair trade. It's not a good pitch.
Yeah. After we did our Saratov, we put it in theaters and it did well. It recouped very, very quickly in theaters. There was enough momentum that my next movie, I did one called Freetown that we wanted to shoot in Africa. And I announced it very early. said, "This is my next project." I actually reached back out to the producer friend who said, "Who's going to give you $3 million?" And said, "Hey, Saratov is doing all right. Would you like to be a part of this one?" And he said, "The first thing we need to do is get on a plane and go to Africa and start location scouting." This was before we had raised the money. I think we'd been given a little bit of development money, but he has that concept down of start executing. Like the idea is there, but the execution is what people are going to invest in.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up an idea that's interesting. I think producers and really filmmakers, if you're a director or a writer, like having your own development fund gives you the ability to create some leverage, create some momentum, right? One version of that is you're going to write the script on your own on spec, right? So it doesn't require any money or expense, but you can take the time, which is a form of capital, and say, I'm going to invest my time into this script. And if you're telling people about it, I got this idea, I've got good feedback on it, I'm going to turn it into the script, follow along, get on my email list or follow me on social media so you can see updates and stuff. You're showing the momentum that the project has. Well, if you at the same time are having conversations with producers and actors and doing a table read and getting feedback, all of that momentum starts to build. But I'm thinking as a producer, I've benefited in the past from having a little stockpile of money to say, I want to hire a writer to create a treatment for this story that I found. Right. I remember an example of finding a Western that was written by a guy named Bret Hart in the 1840s. So it's public domain. There's a version of the movie that was made in the 60s, but it's not very good. And so I hired a writer and said, can you do this? We've got $2,500. Can you do a treatment for me? And she wrote an amazing 15-page treatment, which was an adaptation of the story, very true to the story, but with modern elements, at least modern principles and ideas that were integrated so cleanly into it. I was just like, this is amazing. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I needed to go raise $2,500 from an investor to pay for a writer. So there's some benefit there to, have a $5,000 or $10,000 thing. I know that maybe sounds to some people like impossible. I can't even raise $500, let alone that. But if you're doing this, if you've been at it for a while and you want to create some momentum and leverage, have a little stockpile of money for development. And then you own the projects because you developed them. And if you are actively talking about the things that you're working on, then that's going to attract people who are also interested in that. Because the thing is, investors and crew people and distributors, they're attracted to and drawn to this momentum. Like if it's a moving train, they have that feel, that tension, that pull of like, I better get on that. That one's leaving the station. These other 10 trains over here are just parked. There's no conductor. They're not
Ideas.
going anywhere. Those are ideas. This one, even if the train is a little rickety and maybe isn't the most glorious ride that they're expecting in their entire career, it's moving. I want to get on that because at least I'm going to get somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I agree, Darren. Okay, our
We got one
fifth and
more.
final. Is that you?
I like it. Yeah. Okay. This is a great reframe that I think is required for if you have to be resilient and resourceful and have a lot of faith in this industry. Someone asked me the other day too, like, can you talk? It was on a live call, and one of the members of the community I'm putting together basically said, tell me about how faith applies in this industry. I was like, oh, it's in everything you do. And so this reframe has really helped. It's that you're not failing, you're still in development. Okay, that's a big reframe because we can take every no as either a rejection or a lesson. We can take it as, oh, I failed, I'm not good enough, this was never going to happen, why isn't it happening for me? It's so frustrating. Or we can say that's information that I didn't have before. Oh, I did a whole week where I talked to 5 different law firms because I was like, oh, they work with producers and investors and they put deals together. I wonder if they have access that I don't have. Put deals together. I won these lawyers. It became very clear that they don't help. Great. I have 3 more of these, but instead of taking it as a defeat or a failure that I was barking up the wrong tree, I just decided to learn. So I was like, hey, great. I know that you guys can't help with fundraising, but here's what I'm working on. What advice do you have for me? And I learned a lot in those 5 conversations.
Mm.
So the part that a lot of people leave out is that these overnight success stories that you hear all the time of a movie getting funded or a deal coming together or someone getting a big role, they leave out the decade of refinement and learning and reworking and repositioning and just constantly improving. And that's why I vocally talk about how it took 12 years to do my first movie, because I want people to realize I'm not special here. Like, just because I'm raising a fund, just because I produced your last two movies, it's not because out of nowhere I became a good producer. It took 12 years, guys. Like, it took a long freaking time. And so if you can look at your current project as training ground, what can I learn from this experience along the way until the yes comes, whether it's on this project or a different one? It's not failure, it's learning, it's lessons. And
Yeah.
so that is a big reframe that's going to help people to keep moving and keep progressing and keep the faith.
I love that, and it's almost as if and I think that that applies to, throughout anybody's career. To say, look, Christopher Nolan, when he's making Tenant, how much of Inception was in develop was influenced or could be applied to what he then did for Tenet or something like that. Any filmmaker is going to say, yes, I've learned from my previous films and I'm going to do things differently, or each film is going to benefit from what I've learned in the past. So even on a microcosm scale, as far as raising money or pitching the idea, well, I've learned from these other pitches that resulted in this way. So now what can I do to continue those results or pivot and change those results?
Yeah.
That, that's a complicated way of saying probably what we already all know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things I know and have known for 20 years, and I still have to be reminded of them. And sometimes it's on the seventh or 10th time that I go, oh, I've known this for a long time, but I haven't done anything about it. Now that knowledge is going to turn to wisdom because I'm actually putting it into practice. So, reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, doing all that stuff. Yeah, it's important to learn, but you don't master your craft by listening to podcasts. You do it by doing it. And so maybe that's a bonus. But like, that's a big part of this creative space that we operate in, is that for a long time I thought if I just read the next book or talked to the right person that it would unlock everything in my career. And the only thing that got me the next project was the current project, and talking about it and learning from it and
Mm,
being vocal about it. And so that's a big part. Maybe that's an other idea. An additional idea is just, if you do it all in silence in your room, you're writing the script and you're bemoaning the fact that no one knows about you and no one has said yes to you. Well, what if you got a little more public about it? What if you shared photos from set? What if you shared your chapters or your pages on Wattpad or online, on Medium or on your blog or whatever it might be? My personal experience here is the last two books I've written, I wrote them in public. What does that mean? Well, there's this idea called building in public that's very common in like SaaS or tech or startups, where individual coders, developers, entrepreneurs are building in public. They're basically creating their company or their app or their thing in public online. They're sharing
yeah,
every day updates about the thing. It's like, well, I think you could apply that to film, and I think you could apply that to writing. So I took the challenge and I said, I'm going to write my next book in public. I'm going to publish each chapter as a blog post. It's the first draft, but I'm going to use that as a vehicle to grow an audience and get awareness. And when the book comes out, I won't have 20 people to tell, I'll have 2,000 people to tell.
yeah,
And it worked. I went from like 500 people on my email list to over 2,000 in about a 6-8 month period. Well, it was probably a year period. And when I released the book, I sold 100 copies the first week, which was amazing. I wouldn't have been able to do that with an audience of 500 people. And so building in public, I've shared this story too many times. Like, the way that you and I started working together is because I was posting pictures from set from a different movie every single day. And when you called me, we'd never worked together before. Your
right.
first words were, "Hey, you've been doing a lot of producing lately." I said, "Yes, I have." That's what happens when you get public about it, is opportunities start coming to you because, again, people like momentum. They like being involved with people and projects that have momentum. So you can create that. You can even manufacture that by being public about what you're working on.
Yeah. No, I love that idea, and it makes me think, okay, if I'm in this development stage right now, I've got several pitches, how much do I need to be sharing what those projects are, and getting those pitch decks out there in a way that more people can look at them. Certainly they're for an intended audience, an intended, curious to invest audience. But in order to find those individuals, I need to get the word out there to do that.
Yeah. Well, here's me teeing up and teasing a potential future episode. I wonder if you and I both pitch what we're currently pitching on the podcast. So I pitch you the fund, you pitch me one or two of your projects, so people can see how we're pitching stuff. That's pretty vulnerable to put that stuff out there, but I think that might be a cool way for people to learn, off of our experience of having pitching stuff for 10 years plus.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. No guarantees, listener. You're gonna have to keep listening for a while to see. But it's fun. Hey, as we wrap up, I want to share just a cool experience, which kind of was a good reminder for me of why we're all doing this. So this Africa documentary kind of still going on, but I left early for health issues. In order to get home, I had a 1 day layover in Accra, Ghana, where I filmed 11 years ago a feature film called Freetown. And I thought, when I made the arrangements, I thought, oh, okay, I'm just gonna kind of hole up in a hotel and get some editing and emails done, and just in and out in the day, and then I thought, no, wait a second, I made a movie here, I've got film family here, I need to reach out. So I resurrected the old WhatsApp conversations from 11 years ago. Said, hey, I'm in town, I got a day, stop by the hotel if you want to see that. And it was just so thrilling. Throughout the day, I had, different cast and crew that made an effort to come out,
Wow.
stop in. We chatted, 15, 20-minute visits, and just got up to date on, their well-being, their families. And it was great to reconnect with them. And I think that, as a first time independent filmmaker, you always say, there's a default answer of, I want to make movies that change people's lives. I want to make movies that impact people, right? You remember sitting in a movie theater and watching a movie and being impacted by that, and say, oh, I want to make that type of movie. That
Yeah.
when audiences watch it, they're impacted by it. And I think it's important to remember and realize that as independent filmmakers, that impact starts with you. It starts with that initial idea. It starts on set, and the person whose life has to be impacted first is your own. And that was a powerful reminder that yes, movies can change people's lives, including your own. So let them do that. And so I was grateful for that day in Ghana to remember that lesson.
Awesome. That's an inspiring lesson that I think is a great way to wrap up the episode. I'd love to know, for the audience, if you're listening, which one of these today was kind of the most eye-opening or impactful for you. Let us know in the comments, or leave a review, or come find us online. I'm on LinkedIn. Where do you spend most of your online time? Are you online at all?
Just ryan.gosling.gmail. Send it, everybody.
RyanGosling@gmail.com.
No, yeah, I don't have a big online presence. LinkedIn is fine.
Oh man. But yeah, let us know which one was most impactful. If you would consider sharing this episode with someone you think would benefit from it, that helps the audience grow and helps us reach and help more people. So thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Garrett, we'll see you next week.
Great chat. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified, and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.